And welcome everyone. Apologies for the delay in starting this meeting. We've had a few technical issues with the webcast. Welcome to the decision days of myself, Executive Lead Member for Transport and Environment Strategy, as well as following this, the decision day of Councillor Adams King, Executive Member for Highways Operations. These decision days are being broadcast in one session live on our YouTube channel via the County Council's website. I would also like to welcome to the meeting Councillor Mellor, the Select Committee Chairman, Councillors Groves and Parker Jones, the main opposition and independent spokespersons, and Councillors Warwick and Adams King. Going into the meeting agenda, I have no deputations at my decision day today, but I do have a number of county councillors who have joined to speak on item 5, the Basingstoke transport update. I've also received a large number of emails on this report, which I have obviously read and will take into consideration. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that item to the top of the agenda today and take that item next, so that those who are just here for that item can head on, or obviously are welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting. So with that, we go to item 5, which is the Basingstoke transport update. And before I ask the officer to present the report, can I invite the councillors who wish to speak? And the first person I have on my list is Councillor Stephen Reid. Stephen, do you want to say a few words before you introduce this report?
Thank you, Edward. I've got about 8 different headings, I think it is. Do you want me to take them one by one so that you can comment, or would you like them in their entirety?
Stephen, take them on their entirety. I'm not going to comment because I shall probably comment on them after Stuart has introduced his report. But if you'd like to go through them as a whole, and then we'll pick them up.
Running down then, policy statement 3. I fully agree with what we have got written in the decision day. Thing is, I'm not sure that Basingstoke and Deane are cooperating as they should be. I fully agree that we should have a development-led local distributor road, ultimately linking the A30 and the A339, which incidentally does need a crossing of the railway line to achieve it. But the main road through Manydown North is a low capacity 30-mile-an-hour road passing through shopping centres and the like, and it won't be able to function as part of an effective A30 to A339 link. I think we need to engage quite robustly with Basingstoke and Deane to see if anything can be salvaged from what I believe is a poor decision on their part to make this objective actually happen. The second one is policy statement number 5, where we say that local planning authority and developers should build MRT into their movement strategies. I went to a meeting the other day which Stagecoach were at, and they were saying that their passenger levels are only up to about 65% of pre-pandemic levels, although you've indicated to me that that might be higher than that when it comes to leisure travel as opposed to commuting. Nevertheless, commuting, I think, is one of the major success criteria for a mass rapid transit link. And I do think that we need to engage with them to see whether this strategy, which was probably founded a couple of years ago, is still a valid strategy in the light of the changes that COVID has produced. Policy statement number 6 says that the LPU and developers should be clear that MRT or other public transport services will have long-term commercial viability, not requiring ongoing subsidy. That's a great idea, but to get it started, I don't see how you can avoid a subsidy. If you have one house built, for example, and you want to run a bus service, it'll undoubtedly require a subsidy. By the time you get up to 5,000 to 10,000, then you may be at a viability, and there'll be a critical point in between where things go from being in need of subsidy to self-sustaining. So I think there's a lot of thought that needs to go into that one. Policy Statement 8 talks about when the need for a development link road is triggered, it'll require a road bridge crossing of the railway line, initially to facilitate the MRT. A couple of points there. The first is that I think a tunnel shouldn't be ruled out. It really depends where it goes. But some people have said to me that using a tunnel could actually be cheaper and it wouldn't involve the closure of the railway line, which laying a bridge would. So I would just sort of put that in for completeness. And I would also, although again, you and I have discussed this briefly, I think it would be wrong to rule out the use of the crossing of the railway line for other users other than the mass rapid transit. Although I think the counter argument to that, which you have put, is that to get it going, we need to give an advantage to the MRT. But I'm unpersuaded on that one at the moment. The transport impact study, I support the transport impact study. We're talking now about Policy Statement 17 and the priority improvements to the M3. I am very troubled by this one, and my recommendation to you is that this is such a massive topic that I'm surprised that there hasn't been greater consultation, or indeed any consultation, with the local members, because I think the local members are the people who will get the questions, and we could have major input to you. And given that Basingstoke and Deane appears to have put its local plan process back by a year, I think there is flexibility within the system for us to take some time out for such a consultation, so that the officers can be confident that they've got things right and can command the support of the local members. The closure of the south-facing slip roads is very controversial, and I can understand how it's solving the weaving problem on the M3 between junction 7 and 8, which I've experienced myself. It's awkward. I'm not aware of great accidents, but it's certainly awkward. But the making of junction 8 a fully fledged junction might be interpreted as encouraging the developments down at Popham Airfield, which the Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council has within its draft local plan, and it could also serve the resurrected idea of building at Mitchell Devon Station. So doing that sort of work could have grave implications for the central area of Hampshire between Basingstoke and Winchester, and open it up for development. I'm also very worried about the impact on the A30. Hand in glove with this is the idea that the A30 would be dualled and it would have more roundabouts, but that would involve a lot of extra traffic going past the entrance to the preferred site for the North Hampshire Hospital. And I have seen no evidence in the report of the hospital trust on which I used to serve and on which Juliet Henderson now serves as a governor. I've seen no evidence of them having been consulted and saying that they are happy with it. So I think that there are lots of risks attached to this particular policy, and my recommendation would be that it is deferred to allow a proper explanation and consultation to take place, and failing that, that the decision be refused at this stage to allow further investigation. I wouldn't like to see Hampshire County Council committing itself at this early stage to a solution which could turn out to be contentious and potentially damaging to the region's interests. I could wax lyrical on that, but I won't take any more of your time, Leader. Sorry, executive member. I'm in two minds as to whether the extensive text ahead of policy statement 17 was helpful, and I know that you feel similar. Policy statement 18 and 19, safeguarding the option of a mass rapid transit link. I would recommend that the policy proposals to be updated to show what road improvements will take place as well, because an MRT will take some time to realise, and until it's up and running, the 15,000 or so houses that are going to go in the southwest of Basingstoke will need something to cope with the traffic. And at the moment, there is no road at all, other than the estate roads, obviously, included in the plans for those 15,000 or so houses. Policy statement 20 talks about the leisure park. Now, I'm concerned about the wording here, and I think it might just be a wording problem. But we're saying that Hampshire is willing that the current leisure park should be considered as a local rather than regional responsibility. I think it is a regional facility now, and so that calls into question whether we're advocating a downgrading of the offer. But could we, as Hampshire, say we would like to see that the status of the leisure park is maintained roughly where it is now? Or words to that effect, to make it clear that we're not trying to downgrade it. And finally, the modal shift and the attractiveness of the MRT, policy statement 21. I would like policy statement 21 to read that further work is required to understand how impacts to traffic, air quality and noise on the ringway and nearby roundabouts can be mitigated, including but not exclusively centred on how modal shift can be achieved. I think we're putting too many eggs in the modal shift basket, and we need to keep our options open more. Those are my comments. Edward, thank you for listening.
Stephen, thank you very much. And I think Office will pick some up, but if they don't, I will pick some up when I comment before I make my decision. The next person I've got on my list is Councillor Kim Taylor.
Thank you very much. It's difficult to follow what Councillor Reid has said because it's fairly extensive and covers most things, I think. So I won't repeat all of the issues that he's raised, other than perhaps to reconfirm the issues around policy statement 17 and to ask, as he has done, for that matter to be deferred at this point. And it might only need to be quite a short deferral, because it's very difficult at this point in time with the information that's available in the report and without background and better mapping to be able to establish exactly how this will work well. And in fact, really, from the point of view of Basingstoke, Hampshire County councillors, we are in a fairly uninformed situation about this matter. I mean, it's brilliant that we're actually thinking ahead and getting all these, forward plans put together, particularly around the MRT and some of the other issues where we expect to have pinch points. But this is such a massive issue that really affects residents significantly, not just because people might want to join at Junction 7 in order to use the M3 to get down to Southampton or back up to London, but it is also a fairly substantial use for people trying to get from one end of Basingstoke to the other in the absence of any ring road that joins properly. And when we actually get to the new situation with the town centre redevelopment and the roads that will be there, it will place even greater burden on the ring road if you can't quickly get from Junction 7 to the other end of Basingstoke. There's a significant portion of traffic that uses it for that reason, and the new plans are like for the town centre redevelopment are likely to mean that traffic will be forced, certain roads will be closed and traffic will be forced onto the ring road. And if you have also the additional traffic from the junction 7 on that ring road as well. It's going, you know, that too is going to be over capacity quite quickly. So I think that there hasn't been, you know, this is clearly quite a detailed study, and obviously as a fairly new council, I won't have been around at the previous ones. But what I would say is that I think that that particular issue would merit being delayed, even just for a short time, to enable Basingstoke, Hampshire County councillors to have a discussion with officers where we can see more detailed maps, more detailed information, and understand the logic and the thinking behind this. And perhaps there might be useful things that we can contribute. So at the moment, I wouldn't like to say I'm against it, because I'm not sufficiently informed, and that's really what I'm asking for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, I think officers will pick it up, or I certainly will. I'm now going to ask if either of the two spokesmen have anything they want to comment on this item. So I'll start with Councillor Groves, if you've got any comments that you want to make.
No, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity, but no, I've got no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Parker-Jones.
No, nothing to add. I would have just mentioned that ensure you do lots of consultation, because it does sound like that is perhaps a potential gap. And I think, you know, we all make better decisions when we're better informed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, that case at this point, and I'm going to go to officers. And Stuart, do you want to introduce, or do you want one of your colleagues to do so?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, Frank Baxter's actually going to take us through this item, and I think Frank's got my colleague Hayley Thorne with him as well, if required, to provide more detailed answers on any of the things. But I'd like to hand straight over to Frank, Chairman.
Okay, Frank, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like me to answer the questions first, or do a broad presentation on the recommendations?
I would start with the broad bit, and then if you could sort of pick up the questions, that would be most helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so it's going to be a bit of a double act. I'll start, and then Hayley will take over. So first of all, just want to introduce the key recommendations in this report. First is to adopt a number of policy statements that are within the text of the report that Councillor Reid has pulled out and mentioned already. It's also to support in principle the access strategy that the District Council are developing for the town centre. And it's also to seek approval to start engagement work and consultation work on a mass transit scheme, and then also potentially to engage in discussions with landowners where there may be a need to start to have conversations about land ownership issues that would then allow us to deliver the schemes that we need to do. The bit which seems to have highlighted the most concerns today and in the press has been recommendations 16 and 17, or policy statements 16 and 17. There is a lot of history behind this that started quite some time ago when we developed our interim position statement back in the 11th of March 2021. That was to a certain extent in response to the approved plan for the vision for land north of the M3 at junction 7, which was adopted by the Borough Council on the 9th of March 2021. And that identified the west of Basingstoke as a significant area for growth, and it also identified that there would be a need for a motorway enhancement or improvement, but it didn't identify at that stage what that might look like. So on the 11th of March, the County Council adopted an interim position statement which said we needed to study those junctions, have a look at them, see what the impact of all that development would be on those junctions, and come up with a proposal or an indicative scheme that would allow all those things to happen, have sufficient capacity, and deal with the weaving issues that we know occur between junctions 7 and 8. That's where the junctions are so close that actually the traffic that's weaving across itself actually has a bit of a road safety issue. So that's one that we wanted to see if we could address. So the policy statements 16 and 17 in this report are largely in response to the previous statements that said that we needed to do that study work back in 2021. They are effectively putting in place, and we need to read them very carefully, they are seeking to safeguard land or identify land that could be put to the local planning authority, who are the only authority who can safeguard land, in order to reserve that space on the highway or off the highway so that if in the future these improvements are needed, that land won't have been used for something else inadvertently, and that those ideas and these schemes can be delivered. So first and foremost, this isn't a policy position which is adopting a plan for consultation. It's purely trying to identify what footprint might need to be safeguarded in the next local plan. And at the time of doing this, writing this report, the local plan was intended to start consultation by the end of this year. It has been put back a year, so that is something to bear in mind. The second part of the recommendations was to make representations to national highways in the policy statement to effectively look at the weaving issue and to deal with the congestion issues that would occur beyond 2039. And our statement there was to make representations, or to create a policy statement that allows us to make policy representations to national highways to include a study or delivery or whatever, a scheme beyond that 2039 period. It's worth bearing in mind that a lot of this work is about creating and responding to the land use changes, is somewhat iterative in that we need to get the land use changes, the transport implications of those changes, and then have that dialogue with the local planning authority, members, etc. And this is part of that process to say, if this land use happens in this location to the west of Basingstoke at this scale, this is the indicative type of solution that may be required. So what we're trying to do here is create a dialogue that would allow us to better integrate both the land use and transport planning system at the same time. So what I'll do now is I'm going to hand over to Hayley. Hayley, do you want to go through the detail of each of those recommendations?
Thanks, Frank. So I won't talk in too much detail about the first two policy statements because Frank's just discussed them, but I'll talk about the rest of the report. So the next two policy statements talk about the development of the Basingstoke mass rapid transit strategy. So the first of these policy proposals, it requests the land is safeguarded to enable the delivery of the mass rapid transit system. So similarly to the discussion about the work on the M3, we just need to make sure that we have the land available in the future to make the changes needed to mitigate the impact of development. So that's what we're asking for on the mass rapid transport system. The second policy relating to that, again, is just noting that the mass rapid transport system will take a long time to come forward. You know, it's a really aspirational scheme. So we're just acknowledging there that it needs a long-term delivery approach and we need to plan for the future. So the next policy position talks about the leisure park. And I think it was Councillor Reid mentioned in his statement at the beginning there that we need to be careful that we're not suggesting that the leisure park should be downgraded. No, that's definitely not what we propose at all. It's just acknowledging that the leisure park is well located to be close to the town centre, and so you know, sustainable and active travel should be the first choice for people travelling there. We don't want a use that encourages a significant increase in vehicular traffic going to the site. So that's why we've said a regional leisure offer rather, sorry, we wouldn't support a regional leisure offer, we'd rather have a local one. And that's just to make sure that we are having sustainable development on that site. And finally, the next part of the report talks about the town centre master plan that Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council have been working on. The proposals within the master plan, you know, would lead to quite a change to the way that the town centre currently operates and how vehicles access the town centre. The idea is that the town centre would become a place that's more people friendly and can be accessed more easily by walking, cycling and public transport. So the policy statement we've put forward there just proposes that we support this kind of strategy, but further work is required on noise pollution, air pollution and the impact of all traffic on the ringway. So those are the main policy recommendations within the report. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Hayley. Right, before we go, I have got a couple of questions. first of all, just going back onto the policy 8 that Councillor Reid raised, I think, is there any reason why we cannot amend that policy to just reference the crossing of the railway line rather than necessarily a bridge, so that we take on board Councillor Reid's comments that perhaps there might be a tunnel or some other thing might be appropriate? I think that the issue we've got here is there needs to be a crossing to enable the MRT, and I do actually note that it does say later on in that policy statement that appropriate consideration should be given to how priority given to other modes, but it does say we keep under review the use of other vehicles. So perhaps we could just amend that to say crossing rather than necessarily a bridge. Just again, Haley, for clarity, we refer to local leisure and regional leisure. So to confirm, we consider the current use on the leisure park to be local leisure, and therefore this is not a change from the current level of usage.
If I may,
Yep.
the current facilities there do present a regional offer, so they attract people from a very long distance.
Yep.
It would be the intensification of that would cause problems to the ring road and other parts of the road network. So what we're saying is, let's keep whatever comes next, let's make sure it provides a local offer to the residents of Basingstoke and Dean, and not a regional offer which could then trigger many junctions on the ringway, and even the motorway junctions to reach capacity or exceed them much sooner than they would otherwise do.
I think we're going to have to slightly amend that one just to reflect, Frank, what you have just said. I think what I'm going to do is on recommendation 2 in reflect of that and number 8 is if I agree this subject to delegating to the director to make minor amendments to reflect our discussions, and that way we can just make these slight wording changes without having to come back to me. I'm now just going to turn to what I think has been the sort of the main substantive issues, which is around policy statement 17. And I think on this, I think it's important to reflect on what it is I'm actually agreeing today. Because I think, as Councillor Reid and Councillor Taylor pointed out, I think some of the preceding text, which I think quite rightly, and I think it would have been wrong for us to have engaged in this modelling work and discussions with National Highways, who I understand have been involved in our modelling work, and not have put that into the report so that people were aware of what we have been doing. But I do note in paragraph 26 that this is clear that it asks one of the potential options to solve the transport problem. And actually what the policy statement is doing is it doesn't actually make any mention in the policy statement of the proposed changes to possible changes to a junction. What it asks is that National Highways, Government and Transport for the South East prioritise road improvement between the junctions and 7-8 and include it in their regional investment strategy. So I think there is an awful lot of work that needs to be done around understanding the full detail of this, but I don't think any of that precludes us asking that the government, National Highways and Transport to the South East prioritise looking at this. And I think that so what I think I can do is say certainly to Councillor Taylor, Councillor Reid and all local members that we will engage with you continue to engage with you on the options. And I think it's also important to say that should National Highways bring any proposals forward, and they certainly don't have proposals at the moment because we're asking them to develop some, that we would obviously make sure that we're all local members who are involved. And I think this is a good point for me just to say that Councillor Juliet Henderson, the representative for Candovers, Oakley and Overton, would have liked to have been at this meeting today to make her points, and that she has had extensive communications with me She also asked that I consider deferring this item, as has Councillor Elaine Still. But I think, on balance, looking at what the policy statement says that I am being asked to agree, I don't see that there's any reason to defer that at this time. I think, other than that, I think, Councillor Reid, most of your points have been addressed. I will just say, I think your comment around statement 6 and ongoing viability, I think that was very clear there, but it's in the longer term that must be viable. I'm obviously aware that in those interim periods, at some time developers are required through 106 and other mechanisms to provide funding to make public transport sustainable and financially viable while that number grows, but that point is taken on. So I think before I go to consider recommendations, I'm just at this point going to ask whether either of my cabinet colleagues, Councillor Warwick or Councillor Adams-King, have got any comments to make. I'm just looking to see if either put their hand up.
No, thank you, Chairman. No additional comments from me. Thank you.
And Nick, have you got anything?
Sorry, not quite quick enough to get my hand up. I think, well, as you know, I also have attended some of the meetings with the Basin State members with you. I think to reassure them, I hope, the important thing to remember here that this isn't a decision in and of itself. It's a point in time where we are looking at proposals, and it's entirely possible that these will move as the Basin State local plan begins to change. We've seen comments from National Highways as well, and they obviously are very much in the mix around the proposal 17. So I think it's fair to say, I think we both recognise that things could have been, some consultation with the local members could be better, and I think we've learnt from that to ensure that that happens from the technical aspects as we take this forward. So I'm not sure what a deferral would achieve, to be honest with you. Not least because the issues, particularly, I understand entirely the issues around the hospital. Stephen and I have both been in similar situations in our past lives of being involved on different sides of the table. Me on the side of the CCG and he on the side of the hospital trust, and there's still, you know, quite a bit of uncertainty around exactly what that's going to look like. So I think my comment would be that I'm not sure that a deferral helps anybody necessarily, but what will help is making sure that people are up to date as matters progress, and as these plans proceed. And, you know, we have to remember we're talking about plans that are probably, you know, many years away. This is not going to be happening in the next couple of years. So that would be my comment. Thanks.
Nick, thank you. I think you make a good point in the sense that this really is an iterative process. I appreciate that the Basingstoke and Dean local plan has now been delayed somewhat, but equally, you know, this is a case of us developing these policy statements based on the emerging thinking of the local plan process. There is, without a doubt, as that process progresses, our policy statements inform that decision making, but so too will that decision making come back and have to change and inform our position on planning, on the transport we provide. So even setting aside the fact that what we're doing, particularly with 2017, is asking that the study take place, I equally can't imagine that we will not be back looking at these policy statements again, if not before, then certainly after Basingstoke and Dean have adopted their local plan update. But I would be surprised if it wasn't before that, as their thinking changes. So I think with that, I will then go to the recommendations at 2. 2, we have added the additional part to enable, in consultation with me, the director, to make alterations to the policy statements reference to just reflect our discussions here. So that's around the leisure park and around the crossing of the railway line. And then 3 and 4, and I am happy to agree those recommendations as with the change to 2. So thank you. That concludes item 5. So with that, can I just say thank you to those members who joined us for that particular item. Obviously, you're welcome to stay, but equally will understand if you wish to depart. And that takes us on to item 1, which is the Hampshire Highway Service contract extension. I will just comment there are 2 exempt appendices on this item, but as no one's indicated that they want to speak on these specifically, I don't propose to go into exempt session. Therefore, I'm going to invite officers to speak to the main report. Again, if anyone does have anything from the exempt appendices, please do say so that we can go into private session. But with that, I will go to Stuart and let you start this off and introduce the officers presenting it.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I shan't say anything further other than that this matter was also considered at some length at the Select Committee meeting this morning, but my colleague Tim Lawton is going to briefly introduce the report and the debate from this morning's Select Committee.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Councillor Heron. Yes, as Stuart has just highlighted, this item was subject to extensive discussion at the Transport and Environment Select Committee earlier today, where it received broad support. Councillor Heron, the paper seeks authority to extend the Hampshire Highway Service contract for a maximum of 5 years beyond 2024 to the 30th of April 2029. The proposed extension has been subject to specialist external legal advice and scrutiny as part of the due diligence process, and it is considered to be in the County Council's best interest to extend the contract with Milestone Infrastructure in light of their sustained good performance to date, and also the current economic conditions, and particularly the financial and commercial volatility across the UK construction sector, both of which are highlighted in the appendix to the report.
Excellent, thank you. Before I sort of go to the decision, I'll start with Jan or Nick. Do you have anything you want to comment on this one? Nick in particular, I suppose. Nick.
Oh, I'd just really repeat the comments that I made this morning, Edward, at the TE committee, which is I'm very supportive of this. As you know, I've only been in post for a few months, and that's been a very steep learning curve. But in that respect, what's been really heartening is to learn how cooperative our relationship with Milestone is. And it's not just a matter, as I'm sure you and Jan have both experienced in the past, of having a contractor with whom you have a very rigid contractual relationship. They really do strive to work in partnership with us. They have been doing a great job in terms of responding to the various issues that we have had over the last couple of years with the highway network, particularly around flooding and storms. They certainly do walk the walk in terms of working in partnership with us. So I'd be very supportive of this extension.
Yeah, Jan, you got anything you want to?
Yeah, just to add really to what Nick said, Chairman, and you'll see in point 39 on the carbon mitigation how closely we've worked with Milestone and how keen they are to reduce their own carbon footprint. But importantly, our partnership work on the Mitchell-Dever roads recycling plant, actually, and that is a really exciting, it's almost an award-winning project. And I'm sure there'll be lots of good work in that respect in the future. So thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity.
Excellent, thank you. And Derek, is there anything you want to comment from Select Committee this morning?
No, thank you, Ed. No. There was, I would virtually say, a unanimous support for this recommendation. The area that did concern one or two was the fact that this was in fact not just replacing the existing Milestone contract, but it dated back to 2017 when the same contract was being applied by Skanska, which in turn Milestone adopted. So there was an area where do we really need to refresh perhaps after 7.5, 8 years? But the weight of the odds against it, the fear on costs, the excellent improvements we've seen with Milestone and their forward planning certainly swayed it that there was no doubt. I did question the legality with legal on whether this required a tender exercise, bearing in mind we're talking £70 million per annum contract. But I was assured on that basis, and all the members of the, I think with probably one exception, all the members voted in support of it.
Excellent, thank you. Any comments from either the opposition spokesman? So Councillor Groves, you got any comments you want to make on this one?
I think I would concur with what's been said before. I would support it, and I was encouraged to hear what Milestone claimed to be doing on the environmental side of it as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And Councillor Parker-Jones.
No, I too am so very supportive of the report, and I was fortunate to be briefed very well by officers last week, and it sounds like a really good idea. I think it's an excellent opportunity, particularly with anything that can be done to reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you. I will just say from my time, I have been involved as a local member with Milestones, Skanska, put them together, one of three contractors, main highway contractors with this council, and I will certainly say in my time as acting as a local member, they are by far the easiest ones to deal with, and certainly the ones that I found in my division innovating. So certainly, along with what's in the report and my own local knowledge, I am happy to agree the recommendations at 2, 3, 4 and 5. Excellent. Tim, thank you to you and your team. So now we move to item 2, which is the project appraisal, the Hampshire recycling infrastructure development. Stuart, do you want to just introduce who's taking us through this one?
Yes, again, thank you very much, Chairman. And my colleague Sam Horn is going to take us through this report. Once again, Chairman, this item was also pre-scrutinised this morning at the Environment and Transport Select Committee, and there was again a full debate about that. But if I can hand straight over to Sam to briefly introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this paper comes forward is the seeking approval for the business case to develop a new recycling infrastructure for Hampshire. This to meet the requirements of the recently introduced Environment Act. It's worth pointing out that this decision, a key element of this decision is that this is subject to a planning permission. We haven't yet received planning or gone through the planning process for this facility. We have had delays with the planning process, but due to both the legislative drivers that we have to progress with our recycling infrastructure and the need for certainty for the other waste authorities, the other local authorities in Hampshire and our colleagues at Southampton and Portsmouth, we have had to bring forward the business case ahead of the planning decision. So the planning decision, this decision would be subject to any planning going forward. So as I said, this is in order to deliver the requirements under the Environment Act 2021 to improve the range of recyclable, dry mix recyclable materials that can be collected and processed from the curbside. The project is a 30 million project total cost, and that is to fund primarily the delivery of a new container MRF at a site in Eastleigh, alongside an additional 2 fibre polishing facilities, one at the Eastleigh facility, one at the current site of the Portsmouth MRF, as well as some changes to the waste transfer station infrastructure to allow us to segregate the material into its relevant bays for the districts to be able to deliver into, and us to bulk and move that material around the system. The County Council's contribution towards this project in capital terms is 23.1 million. And there will be separate decisions that both Southampton and Portsmouth City Council will need to take in the coming weeks to confirm their input, their agreement to the business case. They will each be looking to a contribution of around £3.5 million. They have made allocations within their capital programmes for this funding, but obviously need to complete the business case process, and due to the timelines for decisions, that's not been able to get that done ahead of now. In terms of the business case, in very broad terms, we've analysed modelled a number of scenarios in terms of the change that's coming. So the shift to the new recycling system, the twin stream recycling system, and that modelling has indicated that we will see a saving of around £2.3 million per annum off our revenue bill. in order to through delivery of this, primarily driven by a reduction in residual waste, so shifting residual waste material from the residual waste stream into the recycling stream, because we'll be able to capture a much wider range of materials. We'll also see an increase in the total amount of recyclable material and therefore an increase in income. And as a result of the infrastructure delivery, we will no longer need one of our waste transfer stations, and we're able to reduce our capital costs associated with that facility. In addition to those financial benefits, we'll also see a significant increase in recycling. So we think it's modeled to improve the recycling rate by around 13.5%. And we'll also see a collective reduction in our carbon outputs of around 11,000 tonnes of carbon per annum as a result of the shift to the new system and the delivery of the new infrastructure. Now, there are clearly a number of challenges at the moment in relation to the financial economic situation we face and supply chain markets. We're keeping closely in contact with that, and we are managing that process as far as is possible. We have recently tested the supplier market both for deliverability and for cost, and we are reasonably confident that the prices that we have in the report are fit for purpose. And we hope that over the coming weeks there'll be some stabilisation of those prices in due course. So we'll keep an eye on those, but at the moment we're confident that the recent impacts won't affect the business case from the financial perspective. It's worth noting, Chairman, that there is one slight tweak to the report as a result of that engagement with the supply chain, and that is that the delivery of the timetable is likely to be pushed back to slightly later now to 2025 as a result of the challenges there are in supply chain delivery. But that aside, all is well. Happy to take any questions you may have on the report.
Thank you. I don't have any questions at this point, but before we go to a decision, just see if there are any others. So Jan or Nick, have you got any comments that you want to make at this stage?
No, I just want to say well done with this report, because I know it's been many years. Councillor Heron and I have been on Project Integra for longer than I can remember. So we've probably been nagging you, Sam, for this. So I'm just really pleased to see it sort of coming to fruition, albeit slightly delayed. So thank you.
Thank you.
I should declare an interest in this, Edward, before I speak, which is that I am the portfolio holder for waste and recycling in Test Valley. So I have an interest in that respect, but with both my county hat on and with that hat on, I absolutely welcome this. It's long overdue. It provides us as a county with the opportunity to recycle items that are taken as standard as part of the recycling that other areas of the country do, and so the sooner we are able to deliver this, the better, in my opinion.
Thank you. Right. So Councillor Groves, I think you got in first, and then Councillor Park-Jones. Councillor Groves.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I support the principles of this infrastructure. I think it's just the sort of thing we need. Yeah, we might need more than this, but this is the sort of minimum we need for the area that we live in. I noticed, though, it does sort of include the whole of Hampshire, which is obviously a big area in itself with a lot of waste disposal, and it also includes all of Southampton and Portsmouth, which should probably, I don't know whether it triples it or not, but it certainly probably doubles the amount of waste I would think that would come into the site. So I do have concerns about the traffic impact in Eastleigh Town Centre and Bishopstoke Road in particular, and whether the business case has allowed for what improvements are necessary in that sort of area, and you know, how we can mitigate whatever is proposed. Also concerned that it's you know, we have that there is only one access. Everything basically has to come from probably the whole of the county. I would imagine it would all come up Southampton Road and have to come over Bishopstoke Road and into Chickenhall Lane Link Road, unless we were to have an alternative link, such as the Chickenhall Lane Link Road. And I'm very concerned that I think no allowance has been made in the business case for either accessing the Chickenhall Lane Link Road, should it occur, or alternatively, and much less better, improving the access in Eastleigh Town Centre, which includes the roundabout, the railway bridge, and the junction with Chickenhall Lane from Bishopstoke Road. I know it's difficult, I know it's expensive, but I think something needs to be done there, and I think that's what's required. You know, it would seem if there's no access going to be allowed from Chickenhall Lane Link, it does sound as though nothing's been allowed to connect it into it. That presumably means that all access would be through from Eastleigh Town Centre, because there's no other way into the site at all. I'm additionally concerned. I thank you for the answer from Councillor Humby last week to my question at council, which I was unable to make due to being COVID positive, and I have been positive for 10 days, but today I am negative and feeling a lot better. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to be here today. He mentioned there the expectation of an extra heavy vehicle every 4 minutes, 16 per hour in the peak hour. Again, it seems completely unacceptable that we should plan for that in the centre of Eastleigh in this very congested piece of road. Again, concerned there may not be any allowance in the business case for doing anything to deal with that problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will come back to Sam in a moment on that. I'll let Councillor Parker-Jones comment, and then I will have a couple of questions for Sam. Councillor Parker-Jones.
Hi, thank you. You will hear some of what Tim has just said being reiterated, actually. Firstly, it's wonderful that we are finally catching up with some other areas which have been recycling far more of our waste stream, and so that's got to be welcomed. However, I am questioning why the location was chosen. It's very well known in our area that road has been at overcapacity since the 1990s. It can't have its capacity increased because of the logistics with the railway. There is only one route in and one route out. Whenever, and I mean every morning, we have anything happen, you will have a minimum of a 20-minute delay. Just a very short section, and everything grinds to a halt. If we have even one accident, the bridge closes. So I'm not sure what contingency is going to be put into place to deal with the waste if that was to happen. The area is also already part of an air quality management scheme, because the air quality is so poor, and yet we're recommending, an additional heavy vehicle every 4 minutes. A lot of people in that area have got very, very poor health as a result. It's very industrial. So I've got concerns about why that site in particular was chosen. I don't doubt that we don't need it, but when I look at places like the Alton Mirth, it had a dual carriageway. We don't have that luxury. You'll be going past houses, you'll be going through what were Victorian streets, that were developed off the back of the railway. These aren't big, fast roads. They are slow and narrow and already at capacity. So they're the reservations I have with this case. Not the concept of the Mirth, I must reiterate that the Mirth is excellent, but because of its location almost being on its own island, I can't quite reconcile. I should point out I also sit on regulatory committee, so I do remain to be convinced that this is good, because of course this will come back to the regulatory committee as a planning matter, but I do think there are other things that need to be looked at. I hope I've expressed that sufficiently. Thank you.
Thank you. I think before I ask Sam the question, I think you very usefully brought us back to where I think we needed to get to, which is we do need to distinguish between that bit that I'm being asked to look at today, which is the business case, and the planning application that will obviously have to be determined by regular committee in the usual way. So I suppose the question, Sam, I've got to you before I see if Derek's got any comments is, are we happy that any development contributions towards highways contributions that we feel that would be necessary at this time have been included within the business case, if there are any that we think we needed?
Straightforward answer, yes. We had a lot of legal advice on the difference.
Sorry, Derek, that was to Sam, just to ask, or
I'm
Stuart
sorry.
to answer on that one.
Yes, the answer is yes. We factored in all costs associated with the development, Councillor.
Excellent, thank you. Right, sorry, Derek, back to you now, and then if you've got any comments you want to make on this.
Apologies, very limited comment. Quite simply, we had a lot of debate each time it started moving from the business case arena into a planning matter. Legal stepped in and guided us accordingly, and generally there was a good consensus, as Councillor Parker-Jones has just said, on the need for the MRF. That is not doubted. There may be issues on access, which is Councillor Grove's main concern, but other than that, there was strong support for the project. And in respect of the cost that was raised by one or two people, 23 million, with the future savings that can be made by this investment, that was no longer an issue. And let's be frank, if we're not spending 23 million there, we'll be having to spend 23 million or more somewhere else. So the justification for the business case was solid as far as the test committee was concerned.
Thank you very much. I will certainly say, and as Councillor Warwick alluded, you know, I have in different roles been involved with this and been involved with Project Integra, and you know, for many years I've had to, quite right, I don't call it an excuse, I've had to explain to people that where Hampshire was perhaps at the cutting edge of developments within the waste and recycling, where we had our materials recovery facilities, our energy recovery facilities, you know, by the very nature, and if we're looking at here, you know, a £30 million with the contribution, you know, investment, you know, these things have payback periods, and unfortunately, if you are one of the first to put in the new infrastructure, it does unfortunately mean that as you come towards the end of its useful life, sadly, everyone else has moved on and are doing more. And it is really great to be in that position now where we are talking about putting in and having the ability to invest in that new infrastructure. Once again, having the facilities that are hopefully going to be up there leading the edge of what is being done in this country and indeed are in Europe and globally. And I do hope that with this we will be able to deliver recycling facilities that we can be once again rightfully proud at the mix of materials that we can accept. So unless there are any other comments from officers, I'm happy to agree to recommendations at 2, 3 and 4. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
So that now takes us to item 3, which is the transport proposal supporting economic development in Andover. And I'm pleased to say I was recently in Andover with the leader of the Borough Council, and I am familiar with a lot of the things that this report will be talking about. So, Stuart, can I come to you to let us know who's introducing it?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. My colleague Frank Baxter, again, is going to be leading on this and the other items actually on transport strategies, again, supported by Hayley, who's been doing the technical work on them.
Fine, well, in that case, I will go straight to Frank and Hayley from now on. Frank, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report on Andover Town Centre. It's responding to a request from the District Council effectively to enter into and support them on their regeneration proposals for the town centre. The recommendation in the main report is effectively to agree to a policy position that supports the reallocation of road space towards regeneration activities, but also to alternative modes of transport. And what I'll do now is I'll ask Hayley to just step in and cover the detail. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank. So one of the main aspects of the regeneration plans in Andover are changes to the current highways infrastructure, in particularly the A3057. And the changes to the highway infrastructure will enable land to be repurposed for other uses and to create an environment that's easier for people to walk and cycle in and to access all of the facilities in the town centre. So the Andover Master Plan, it proposes to reduce the extent of the Western Gyratory and Vigo roundabout. The infrastructure that's there at the moment was was designed and delivered a long time ago, when there was what we call a predict and provide approach to transport planning, and that kind of approach sought to provide capacity for future growth. So essentially, there's a lot more space on the road than we actually need today. So we've undertaken some transport modelling that looks at what the proposed changes will do to the capacity on the network, in particularly the A3057. And what this technical work shows is that it's not likely to lead to significant issues with congestion, because we have been able to show that the road will still operate within capacity because the road is bigger than we need currently. So although the technical work we've done to date shows that, you know, the plans work in a technical sense, the bit that's missing for us is the current local transport plan, LTP3, that we have at the County Council. It does broadly support moving away and reallocating road space, but it's not explicit. The new local transport plan 4 is still emerging. That's yet to be adopted, and that document would provide a sound policy basis for the kind of changes proposed in Andover, but it's still in draft form, so we're not there yet. So that's why we're bringing this paper to you today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Before I go to the decision, have any members present got any comments they want to make? Not seeing anyone indicating. So in that case, I will go to the recommendation at number 2, which I'm happy to approve. Okay. Moving then on to item 4, which is transport proposals supporting economic development in Farnborough. Frank.
Thanks. This is a Farnborough Town Centre report. This one is slightly different in that it is the subject of, it's a very similar case to Andover, and this one's slightly different in that there is a live planning application that's under consideration as well. The recommendation is pretty identical in terms of supporting. There are also within the main body of the report some caveats for support, mainly because of the requirement that there's an actual live planning application going on at the same time. Hayley, would you like to cover the detail?
Thanks, Frank. Yes, so as Frank said, the live planning application's in. It includes proposals for mixed-use development of around 1,000 homes, community and employment uses. As part of the master plan proposals, there is the redesign of 2 major roads, the A325 and the A327, and the proposals include the replacement of the Pinehurst roundabout with a signalised T-junction, and as part of that, the replacement of all of the subways that are currently in place there on that roundabout. The master plan has also got proposals to change the bus interchange arrangements and to provide new vehicle accesses onto the A road, and to really significantly improve the pedestrian and cycling crossing facilities that are currently there. So with these proposals, there will be a reduction in highway capacity for motorised vehicles, and the reason for this is it will enable the land available for development to be increased, and it will lead to a design that is more people focused and enables people to more easily get into the town centre and to connect to the existing residential areas of the town. Again, this one would result in a fundamental change to the highway layout, and again we've got that issue where the new local transport plan is still in draft, so we need some a stated policy that supports our officers in making the decision for the planning application that's currently submitted. As Frank mentioned, there are a few items we've included in the report with regard to supporting our recommendations. The first is that we see some supportive policies from Rushmore Borough Council to rebalance what it's doing in terms of parking availability and within its land use planning functions. So if we are supportive of taking away highway capacity, we need to make sure that the same is happening within their policies. The next point that we'd like to make sure is within the local policies is that the T junctions that are being proposed instead of the subways do provide that high level of quality and a good level of service for pedestrians and cyclists. Finally, we want to make sure, oh no, sorry, there's two more. We want to make sure that there's pedestrian modeling done to ensure that the routes being proposed can lead to modal shift and take away car use because we are taking away highway capacity. And then finally, we would need to enter into land ownership discussions because obviously taking away some of the highway land for other uses, we get into conversations about land ownership. So yeah, those are the kind of points that we need to make sure are in there. And just in summary, really, we're saying again that we'd like to support the principle of reallocating road space in Farnborough. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I will again say prior to take on this role, I did visit Farnborough with the leader of the Borough Council, and he did happily kindly sort of show some of the aspirations. At least I have walked around and looked at a lot of what we're talking about here, so I can sort of visualise it. Any other members present want to comment on this one at all? Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Councillor Heron. Just to say, I don't know much of the detail of the scheme, but I'm very pleased to read the proposals put forward and certainly the sentiment of all that we've been told today from Hayley and in the report. So that would be my comment on it. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else indicating, so I'm happy to agree the recommendation at 2. So now we move on to Many Down North to Town Centre cycling route Basingstoke. Frank, is that one you again?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, that's me. Okay, so this is a report which has 2 recommendations. The first is to delegate authority to the director to consult and make minor changes on any proposals that are related to this particular scheme, the minor details, etc. The second recommendation is to approve a preferred scheme following consultation. It's worth noting that the approval for the preferred scheme includes the option to choose between a bridge or an at-grade crossing facility, mainly because the bridge is very expensive. We're going through business cases processes and we may need to go for an option 2 rather than just a 1. It's worth noting the consultation that came back was very supportive, with a high level of support for the schemes that were put forward. It was improved from the previous proposal that had been put forward by the developer for the Many Down North development, this is connecting Many Down North effectively to the town centre via the leisure centre that we discussed earlier in the report. This option is higher quality, more direct, and therefore likely to be better used and patronised. Some minor tweaks will be needed to the design, but they're relatively minor. It looks like the consultation, being largely positive, was very favourable in that regard. It's worth noting that the request to start design work now is really important. It's important because we have live funding opportunities. One has already been submitted by the District Council to the Levelling Up Fund, using their Levelling Up Fund bid effectively to fund this scheme. The second is at the end of the year, we'll have an opportunity potentially to bid for this scheme for funding from the Active Travel England funding sources. All of those require spend to be by a certain date, so if we don't start the detailed design work fairly soon, we won't be in a good enough position to be able to spend the money should we win. So that's effectively what this is about. Just to note that members have been consulted before the consultation on the 9th of February 22, and again on the 8th of September after the consultation. All county councillors and local borough councillors were engaged in those processes.
Excellent, thank you. Any members present want to comment on this one? Jan.
Thank you, Chairman. And Frank, I just wanted to check. I know when we had an early look at these proposals, some of the lighting was not great in certain areas. And do you know if that's been picked up? It was the suggestion we made, if you're a woman on your own using that cycle route to and from the centre of town, how good the lighting would be. Do you know if that's been picked up on?
I'm afraid I'm not as close to the detail on that particular issue, Councillor Warwick. I will give you a response after the meeting, though, if that's okay.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands up, so I am happy to agree the recommendations at 2 and 3. So now we move on to item 7, which is the TFSE SIP. And I think Stuart or Dominic, who am I going to first with this one?
Go straight to Dominic, Chairman, and to lead on this again, but partly because this item was discussed this morning at the Select Committee, and Dominic was present and presented that. But Frank and myself are in reserve to answer any questions that members may have on the report, other than the comments that Dominic makes.
Excellent, Dominic, over to you.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just very briefly to outline the report. The Strategic Investment Plan is one of the key policy statements from Transport for South East, subnational transport body for our area, and it is really, if you like, the implementation document for the regional transport strategy. So it is therefore a key document both for investment in the region and the distribution of that investment within the region in due course. The strategy goes to 2050 and it's taking a very long-term, very strategic, high-level look at investment in transport across the region. As far as the report itself goes, the Strategic Investment Plan has been the subject of consultation by TFSE. The consultation period has technically closed, although they have agreed to accept a late response from us. So that's been covered off in terms of the process. And the draft response that we've prepared for you is set out in pages 123 to 127, paragraphs 18 to 20. So that would form the, as long as you're supportive of the recommendations, that would form the response that we send through to that. The response itself is broadly very supportive of the contents of the Strategic Investment Plan. Although we have highlighted within the draft a number of issues which are of particular significance or relevance to Hampshire as a local transport authority. As was mentioned, the paper and a short presentation was considered at the meeting this morning of the Select Committee. The Select Committee were, I believe, broadly supportive of the response. They did ask to highlight, in addition, perhaps 3 further issues. So I can outline those for you very briefly. Of course, our recommendation is the officer's recommendation, and then that's a request from the Select Committee. But they have asked us to reference the inclusion of rail freight and welcome that in particular. They've asked us to highlight the significance and importance of the Solent Freeport, which isn't really mentioned within the draft SIP. And the final element was to make sure that any investment is not solely directed to urban areas, but does have benefit to areas on the fringes of those areas, both the suburban areas of the town cities and also the rural areas that are immediately served by those cities. We have drafted some wording on behalf of the Select Committee, which I've shared with you. The recommendation is to approve the draft report, but also then to delegate authority to finalise the wording of that response. So I think that covers off the inclusion of those. So I think that's the report and the recommendations. Happy to take any questions.
Any Councillor Groves?
Yes, thank you. I probably should speak quickly because my battery's run out and I don't have a cord with me. Could I ask that we particularly make reference to the Freeport Navigator Quarter and its access, which would be the sort of the beginnings of the Chickenhall Lane Link Road, which is probably needed for us. Can that specifically be mentioned? I don't see any mention of that in there. The other point is just to do with the airport access as well, that we draw to attention the importance of good links to the airport. And then, of course, it would be multimodal access to the Freeport. We've got a rail line nearby, so that's part of it, but you may need a station or you may need something else for Freeport itself. And also to the airport as well, whether there's good links from the Portsmouth direction in particular. We have good links from the London direction and the north, as well as from Bournemouth, but not from Portsmouth. So, perhaps draw attention to that. My recommendation, my suggestion is that that should also be drawn attention to in your response. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Any other members got any comments? Derek, is there anything you want to add, or do you think Dominic summed up the select committee?
No, Dominic summed it up excellently. I haven't seen the wording that we're using that you've been advised of, but yes, that summed up. There was a feeling that some of the major projects highlighted, like R12, the upgrading of the A34 to a motorway standard, they can't be just standalone. You've got to reflect the infrastructure adjacent to those particular situations. Example, north-south connectivity must be linked with the A34 in the same way they've mentioned Freeport and all the other activities that we're undertaking down there. So that was it, basically it. Yes, very supportive. Far better that we work across southern England on these projects than trying to do everything ourselves and probably getting rebuffed. So that was excellent. Very good.
Thank you. Well, look, I say Dominic kindly sent me through some wording. I appreciate that you haven't seen this, and actually I'm not going to be agreeing the specific wording because, as Dominic said, recommendation 2 is that I delegate authority to finalise the detailed consultation response to the director. I would like to do so in saying that I would like to incorporate the comments of the select committee into that, just to respond on mention. I wouldn't want to mention a specific Freeport site because I think we want to support the Freeport as a whole, and with that I should declare an interest as I am a director of the Solent Freeport Consortium Limited, but I don't think that's not a pecuniary interest. So with that, I'm happy to agree the recommendations at number 2. Let's get my list back. That now brings us to item 8, which is the A326 South project update. Stuart, who's introducing that one?
This is my colleague Ben Smith who's going to introduce this one, Chairman.
Afternoon, Ben, over to you.
Thank you, Stuart. So the report you've got in front of you is, as you just said, the work to the A326 Waterside corridor. Essentially, it's a programme of junction improvements that reduce congestion, improve capacity, increase capacity, and make improvements to the walking and cycling network in the area. So the report is focusing on 2 aspects. One is seeking approval to increase the project value from 10.45 million to 11.4 million, and primarily that is down to 3 factors. One, which is the general sort of state of sort of the economy and the inflationary impacts on the construction industry. 2 is some environmental issues that were encountered during the construction, and there was some issues around sort of badgers and sets and things like that, which has caused delay and some redesign, which has added cost, unfortunately, to the project. And the 3rd is in response to some representation from local cycling groups, some added value and some modifications to schemes to improve further the facilities for cyclists. So they're the key reasons why we're seeking an increase in the project value. The second recommendation is looking at how that increase, subject to approval, could be funded. And the recommendation is it's funded from the corporate inflation underwrite that I understand was considered at council last week, and drawing down some of the £15 million that was allocated for live capital projects that are currently in the programme. I should just point out, I think, that the wording of that recommendation that went to council was that to draw down that money, it needs approval from the Director of Corporate Operations, the leader and the Chief Executive. So whilst it's written in the way it's written in the report, and that's what we're seeking approval for, there is that process to go through just to confirm that that funding can be allocated as well. I think I have checked the report that went to councils. Hopefully I've reflected accurately what was talked about, and it wasn't fundamentally changed from what's written in the report. So if it has, I apologise, but that's what was in the paper. So that's what the report is covering and the recommendations that we're seeking approval for.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from members present? Not seeing anything, in which case, thank you very much. I'm happy to agree the recommendations at 2 and 3. That now takes us on to item 9, which is appointments to outside bodies, joint committees, panels and partnership boards, and the recommendations are listed on the agenda. Noting that I am just deferring the appointment of the deputy of the Wellbourne Community Forum, but the rest of them are after the agenda, and I am happy to agree those. 10 and 11 are exempt parentheses, so I think I've got the point at which I can now, Nick, hand over to you and let you take on from here. Yep. What have I forgotten, Katie?
Sorry, are you able just to confirm the appointments for the only because they're not on the decision on the
are they not?
record at the moment? So
I thought that they were on here. So Wellbourne Community Forum is Councillor Latham, the Central Hampshire Road Safety Councillor, Councillor Stephen Broomfield, Barry Dunning and Hugh Lumby. The appointments for North Hampshire Road Safety Council are Councillor Alan Mullaney and Councillor Stephen Parker. Public Transport Consortium is Lucky Councillor Adams King. Southampton Port Consultative Committee Councillor Ross Chad. Southern Hampshire Road Safety Council Councillor Burgess. And Southern Water Stakeholder Panel Councillor Warwick. Oh dear, Nick and Jan, you both got caught at this one. With that, then I really can now hand over to Nick. Over to you.
I think Jan got the shorter straw there, though, to be fair. Hello, everyone. I'm the Executive Member for Highways Operations, and thank you for attending my virtual decision day. And if you are waiting for this one, thanks for sitting through all those much more weighty issues than mine. I have no deputations, so we can go straight to my first and only item for today, which is about school streets in Fareham and Hawley. Horbury. And Stuart, I guess you can tell me who's going to be introducing this, please.
Thank you very much. Yes, my colleague Dominic McGrath is just going to introduce this report, Chairman.
Dominic.
Hi, thank you again. So this is very much a quick procedural item, I believe, in that we introduced we introduced a number of school streets trials at the beginning of last academic year. They were in 3 locations. 2 of those remain in place. The enforcement of the trials is secured through experimental traffic orders, which allow us to enforce against vehicles who would be misusing the areas that are covered by the school streets trials. And because they were introduced under experimental traffic orders, those will now expire. There's a desire to keep 2 of those trials running, and to enable that to happen, we're just proposing that those experimental traffic orders be made permanent, which will allow those trials to remain in place for as long as the schools wish to run them. I think it's as simple as that, but happy to take questions.
Yep, that's super, thanks. It talks about subject to agreement with the schools. I presume that the schools, having had them in place, are happy to continue with them.
That's our understanding currently, but we would need to go back to them. There is a large voluntary element to the running of the schemes, and without the support of the schools, they wouldn't continue. So it's just covering off the eventuality that they may not wish to do so.
Super, that's great. Thanks very much, Dominic. Any comments from Jan or Edward?
No further comments. Thank you, Chairman.
All good. I think it looks like Tim's probably lost his power, so I think there are any other members online. In which case, if I know, sorry, Derek. I'm so sorry, Derek. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, nothing to add really. To be frank, the school streets has not been popular because it means a lot of work for the teachers or the volunteers that should be working with them. So I hope the future tests do become a bit more positive.
Yeah.
That's all I've got to say.
Hopefully we can find a way forward for them. In which case, I'm very happy to approve recommendation number 2 as in the report. Thanks very much, Stuart and Dominic.
Thank you.
So I think I go back to Edward now to say goodbye.
And I think, well, excellent. I think it's just my job to say thank you to everybody for attending along, but I think very detailed and interesting meeting, and wish you all a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.